In various places around the world, it is frowned upon or even prohibited to engage romantically with multiple people, which can lead to both social and legal complications, varying by region. However, the question arises, in which nations, traditions, and cultures are these restrictions applied? It is common for marriage in many places to involve only two individuals, with infidelity being severely repressed by local laws. However, in certain regions of Latin America, the legal penalties for infidelity are less severe. Nevertheless, it is well known that many marriages affected by infidelity end in divorce. Still, it is surprising to observe that in some parts of the globe, there are laws that pressure individuals to marry or start a family, either to promote national well-being, boost the population growth of a community, or for economic reasons. It's fascinating to discover that there are laws that allow someone to marry multiple partners, even living under the same roof. For those curious about which countries permit this, keep watching this video to unravel everything about this legislation that for some is controversial, but for others, it's welcomed. Although laws vary from country to country, how would you feel knowing that there are places where having multiple spouses is allowed, or even places that require you to marry by a certain age? In this video, we'll delve into different nations where polygamy is legalized, countries that justify this practice with the aim of increasing their demographics. Be prepared to learn about the legislation in these places and understand the reasons behind maintaining these norms. Firstly, in Sudan, the practice of men having multiple wives is not only legalized, but also culturally accepted and promoted. This policy was introduced by Omar Hassan, the president at the time, in 2001, with the aim of boosting the country's population growth and safeguarding its ancestral cultural traditions and values. The implementation of this specific measure, allowing polygamy, had the primary goal of increasing the birth rate in the country. The Sudanese president emphasized Sudan's territorial and population expansion capabilities, highlighting it as the largest country in Africa in terms of area. He argued that to achieve substantial demographic growth, it would be necessary to expand the workforce, suggesting that favorable conditions were already present for such development. A peculiarity of the Sudanese system, reflecting gender inequality, is the exclusive right to divorce for men, while women are strictly compelled to adhere to this law. Non-compliance by women is severely judged as an act of betrayal, subjecting them to a variety of punishments. This policy not only highlights deeply rooted cultural practices in Sudan, but also draws attention to women's rights and gender equality issues within the country. Secondly, in Saudi Arabia, polygamy is legal and aligned with Sharia law, allowing Muslim men to have up to 4 wives, with the condition of treating all equally and sharing their wealth fairly. However, this practice has become less common in recent times, reflecting a shift in social attitudes. Polygamy, therefore, is more feasible for those with substantial financial resources, as supporting multiple wives requires good economic standing. Number 3, situated in the heart of East Africa, Tanzania stands out for its vast ecological and cultural diversity. This country not only hosts Mount Kilimanjaro, the supreme peak of Africa, but is also home to 3 of the continent's largest lakes, Victoria, Tanganyika, and Malawi, each with its own peculiarities and unique contributions to the local ecosystem. Tanzania's territory is a mosaic of mountains, plateaus, and plains, crisscrossed by rivers like the Rufiji and adorned by islands such as Zanzibar, which together form a natural landscape of incomparable beauty and biodiversity. Tanzania's rich wildlife is evidenced in its numerous protected areas, where Serengeti National Park and Ngorongoro Crater stand out as global icons of safaris and wildlife conservation. These sites not only provide sanctuary for an impressive variety of animals in their natural habitats, but also attract visitors from around the world, eager to witness the majesty of African nature in its purest form. The social practice surrounding marriage in Tanzania is notable, requiring mandatory registration of marriages and declaration of the type of union, whether monogamous or polygamous. This legal requirement reflects the country's traditions and social values, while also facing modern challenges such as fee evasion through false declarations of marital status. In South Africa, legislation already recognizes a man's right to have multiple wives, a practice entrenched in certain cultural traditions of the country. This legal provision is an expression of the constitutional right that allows South Africans to marry up to 4 women, ensuring that all wives share the husband's surname and have equal rights under the law. Polygamy, particularly widespread in regions of West and East Africa, is adopted for reasons that include the pursuit of financial and social stability by young women, and even as a gesture of charity towards older, unmarried or widowed women, according to researcher Rada Jacobs. In specific cases, men may inherit wives from deceased relatives, thus ensuring their social and economic well-being. Jacob Zuma, a South African politician who served as the country's president from 2009 to 2018, is a notable example of this cultural practice. During his tenure, he adhered to various Zulu traditions, including polygamy, which garnered both admiration and criticism from different segments of society. Zuma married multiple times and faced controversies, including allegations of having a child out of wedlock, something he admitted to and apologized for to the ANC and the South African people, highlighting tensions between adherence to cultural traditions and modern society's expectations. The practice of polygamy in South Africa and the personal lives of public figures like Zuma reflect the complexity and diversity of cultural traditions and contemporary debates about rights and equality in the country. In the heart of Ethiopia, where polygamy has been legally banned by the penal code and family laws, this cultural practice persists with vigor, particularly in Muslim and pagan communities. About 5% of married Ethiopian men share their lives with multiple wives. Fascinating and sometimes controversial stories about polygamous families have crossed borders, capturing the attention of the global media. One of the most striking narratives involves an Ethiopian man who lives with 2 wives, and together they have a total of 78 children. This man in particular has expressed his disbelief and concern when faced with the reality of providing for such an extensive family. The Ayatun Nur family, a vivid example of this practice, faces serious financial adversities. With a diet based almost exclusively on banana roots, a food choice marked by necessity rather than preference, their situation highlights the complexities and challenges of maintaining family balance under such conditions. In a desperate move to ensure a promising future for their daughters, the family patriarch is arranging marriages for them, a decision that reflects both his paternal love and the harsh reality of their circumstances. This account not only sheds light on the difficulties faced by polygamous families in Ethiopia, but also raises profound questions about the sustainability and ethics of such practices in a modern world. In the Kingdom of Morocco, the legal practice of a Muslim man having up to 4 wives persists, although it is rare due to restrictions imposed in 2004. These restrictions include the requirement for the husband to obtain written permission from the current wife before being able to remarry and demonstrate financial capability to support all wives equally. Furthermore, marrying without the consent of the current wife can result in fines. Since the implementation of the family code, known as Mutawana, in 2004, significant advancements have occurred, such as raising the minimum age for marriage and introducing stricter conditions for polygamy, requiring exceptional justification and judicial approval, aiming to balance Islamic teachings with contemporary Moroccan reality. This Moroccan legislation, in attempting to align with international human rights standards, still faces challenges in terms of implementation and interpretation, with ongoing debates about the need for additional reforms to enhance women's protection, including inheritance issues and the total prohibition of polygamy. In a historical context, the figure of a Moroccan sultan who lived between 1672 and 1727 stands out, holding the world record for the number of descendants with 888 children. His 2-decade reign was marked by tyrannical governance, during which he was responsible for the deaths of 30,000 subjects who, in some way, defied his orders. This episode illustrates not only a historical practice of polygamy on an unprecedented scale, but also reflects aspects of authoritarian power exercise at the time. The Kingdom of Eswatini, formerly known as Swaziland, is a tiny nation located at the southern tip of the African continent, home to around 1.3 million souls, with a predominantly female demographic. The shortage of eligible men for marriage has led to a unique dilemma for many women in their search for marital partners. In an attempt to mitigate this challenge, the country's monarch instituted legislation that obligates men to adopt polygamy, meaning the prohibition of limiting themselves to a single wife. under the belief that such a measure would facilitate all women the opportunity to find a husband. The state has committed to funding wedding ceremonies and the acquisition of residences for the couples, ensuring a certain level of financial stability. Resistance to this royal decree is not only discouraged, but also severely penalized, to the extent of imposing life imprisonment on those who oppose it. Such legislation puts men and women in a precarious position, where refusing to conform to polygamy can result in serious legal consequences. This matrimonial arrangement, while legally sanctioned, sparks heated debates, confronting deeply rooted cultural traditions and questioning deeply ingrained individual values. It's interesting to note that while marriage typically involves two people, in certain parts of the world, there is a requirement to include more wives in the union, ensuring to cater to all their needs and luxuries. This practice, adopted in some of the mentioned countries, primarily aims to increase the population or preserve local traditions. The reason behind this norm varies, from attempting to combat population decline to preserving ancestral cultural practices. We're curious to hear what you think about these laws. Do you consider them fair? Awaiting your responses in the comments. So we conclude today's video. Remember to subscribe, leave your like, and activate the bell icon to not miss any of our future videos, which promise to be fascinating. Exploring these nations was a revealing adventure, exposing us to a diversity of cultures and laws still unknown to us. Until our next encounter in the following video,